For 6 months they shared the same coffee shop, the same schedule, the same silent longing, until the day fate forced them to share the same table. Jake had been sitting at the same corner table for 6 months now. Every morning, at exactly 8:30, he would walk into Brew and Bean coffee shop, order his usual medium black coffee and blueberry muffin, then settle into his favorite spot by the window. The worn leather chair had become his office, his sanctuary, his escape from the empty apartment he still couldn't call home. The divorce papers had been finalized 8 months ago, but Jake was still learning how to live alone again. At 32, he never thought he'd be starting over, carrying his laptop to coffee shops and trying to rebuild his graphic design business from scratch. The familiar routine of this place gave him something to hold on to when everything else felt uncertain. That Tuesday morning in late October started like any other. Jake ordered his coffee from Maya, the friendly barista who always remembered his order. He pulled out his laptop and started working on a logo design for a local bakery. The autumn leaves outside painted the windows in shades of gold and red, and he found himself lost in the peaceful atmosphere. Then she walked in. Jake glanced up from his screen, just a casual look around the room like he always did. That's when he saw her. A woman about his age, maybe a little younger, with shoulder-length brown hair that caught the morning light. She wore a simple navy coat and carried a small leather bag. There was something about the way she moved, confident but not rushed, that made him look twice. She approached the counter and ordered in a clear, warm voice, "Medium coffee, black, and a blueberry muffin, please." Jake nearly choked on his drink. The exact same order he had just placed 5 minutes earlier. What were the chances? The woman paid, tipped Maya generously, and found a table 3 spots away from Jake. She pulled out a book, a paperback with a colorful cover, and immediately became absorbed in reading. Jake tried to focus on his work, but his eyes kept drifting over to her table. She seemed completely content in her own little world, occasionally sipping her coffee and turning pages. When she finally left an hour later, Jake realized he had barely gotten any work done. He packed up his things and walked to his car, shaking his head at himself. He was supposed to be focusing on his career, on getting his life back on track. The last thing he needed was to get distracted by a stranger in a coffee shop. But Thursday morning, she was there again. Same time, same order, same table. This time she had a different book, something thick with a dark cover. Jake watched her routine unfold exactly as it had on Tuesday. She seemed to have her own schedule, her own ritual, just like he did. He found himself wondering what she did for work, where she lived, what kind of book she liked to read. Over the next few weeks, Jake began to time his coffee shop visits around hers. He told himself it was just curiosity, nothing more. He learned small details about her without ever speaking a word. She drove a blue Honda that she parked in the same spot every time. She always wore professional clothes, suggesting she worked in an office somewhere downtown. She never used her phone while reading, giving her full attention to whatever book she had chosen. Jake started paying attention to her reading choices. One week it was a romance novel, the next, a mystery thriller. She seemed to have broad tastes, always carrying a different book but never an electronic reader. There was something old-fashioned about it that Jake found appealing. In a world where everyone stared at screens all day, she chose actual paper pages. The strangest part was how comfortable her presence made him feel. Jake had been struggling with loneliness since the divorce, finding it hard to enjoy his own company. But somehow having her nearby made the coffee shop feel less empty. She became part of his routine, a constant he could count on even though they were complete strangers. One Thursday morning in November, she didn't show up. Jake waited until 9:30, then 10 o'clock. He ordered a second coffee and pretended to work, but his eyes kept darting to the door. Had something happened to her? Was she sick? Had she found a different coffee shop? The worry surprised him with its intensity. He realized he had started looking forward to these silent encounters more than he wanted to admit. Maya noticed his distraction. "Everything okay today, Jake? You seem restless." "Yeah, I'm fine," he replied, closing his laptop. just having trouble focusing. He left the coffee shop feeling unsettled. That evening, he found himself wondering about her again. He didn't even know her name, but somehow she had become a small bright spot in his otherwise routine days. The realization made him uncomfortable. He was supposed to be healing, figuring out who he was as a single person again. Getting attached to a stranger seemed like a step backward. The following Tuesday, she was back. Jake felt a wave of relief when he saw the familiar navy coat and brown hair. She looked the same as always, carrying her book and ordering her usual. But as she walked to her table, Jake noticed she was moving more carefully than usual. When she sat down, he caught a glimpse of a small bandage on her wrist. The protective instinct that rose up in him was immediate and surprising. He wanted to ask if she was okay, if she needed help with anything. But they had never spoken. How could he approach a complete stranger just because she had a minor injury? It would seem weird, maybe even creepy. So Jake sat there, stealing glances, at her table and wondering what had happened. She seemed fine otherwise, reading her book and sipping her coffee just like always. But the bandage bothered him more than it should have. He spent the entire morning wanting to say something, to offer help, to at least acknowledge that he had noticed. Instead, he packed up his things and left without saying a word, just like he had every other day for the past 2 months. But as he walked to his car, Jake realized something had shifted. This wasn't just curiosity anymore. Somewhere along the way, this stranger had become important to him, and that terrified him almost, as much as it intrigued him. The next few weeks turned into a series of almost moments that left Jake questioning his own sanity. It was like the universe was playing some kind of game with him, bringing them close enough to interact, but never quite making it happen. The first near miss came on a particularly busy Thursday morning. Jake had finished his coffee and was heading to the counter for a refill when she stood up at the exact same time. They both reached for the napkin dispenser that sat between their tables. Their hands almost touched as they grabbed for napkins. She pulled back first, offering a quick smile and a quiet sorry, before stepping aside. Jake managed a nod and grabbed his napkins, his heart beating faster than it should have from such a simple interaction. That small smile stayed with him for the rest of the day. It was friendly but brief, the kind of polite acknowledgement strangers give each other, but Jake found himself replaying it over and over, wondering if there had been something more behind it. 2 weeks later, another almost moment. Jake was walking back from the restroom when she was heading in the same direction. They met right at the narrow hallway, both stopping short to avoid bumping into each other. This time Jake stepped back and gestured for her to go first. She thanked him with another one of those quick smiles, and Jake caught a hint of her perfume as she passed by, something light and floral that made him want to turn around and follow her back to her table. Instead, he returned to his seat and tried to focus on his work, but his concentration was shot for the rest of the morning. Jake started paying closer attention to the books she brought. One Tuesday, she was reading a thick novel with a woman in a red dress on the cover. Jake recognized it as one of those popular romance books that had been all over social media. The next week, it was a mystery thriller with a dark, moody cover. Then came a book about a woman living alone in a marsh somewhere down south. Jake found himself genuinely curious about her taste in literature. During his lunch break that day, Jake stopped by the bookstore downtown. He told himself he was just browsing, but he found himself in the fiction section looking for the books he had seen her reading. He picked up the Marsh book and read the back cover. It sounded interesting, actually. Jake almost bought it, then put it back, feeling ridiculous. What was he going to do? Read it, and then somehow bring it up in a conversation they had never had? But the next week, when she brought out a classic novel, Jake recognized it immediately. He had read that one in college and actually enjoyed it. For a moment, he considered approaching her table and mentioning it. The words were right there. In his mind, "Great book choice, I read that one a few years ago. Simple, casual, not too forward." Jake spent 20 minutes rehearsing different ways to start that conversation in his head. By the time he worked up the courage to actually do it, she had already packed up her things and left. The pattern continued, for weeks. Jake would notice something that could be a conversation starter. spend half the morning thinking about how to approach her, then lose the opportunity when she left. It was becoming a frustrating cycle that made him question whether he was overthinking everything. Maya, the barista, started noticing Jake's distracted behavior. One morning, while making his usual order, she glanced over at the woman's table and then back at Jake with a knowing look. You know, Jake, some people say the best conversations start with the simplest questions, Maya said quietly, handing him his coffee. Jake felt his face heat up. I don't know what you mean. Maya just smiled and moved on to the next customer, but Jake knew she had figured out his situation. If the barista could see what was happening, how obvious was he being? He glanced over at the woman's table, worried she might have noticed his staring, but she was absorbed in her book as usual. That afternoon, Jake had a revelation while working on a design project. The woman had been bringing different types of books each week, but lately, they had been getting more classic, more literary. The romance novels and thrillers had given way to books like Pride and Prejudice and To Kill a Mockingbird. Books that someone might choose if they were trying to gauge another person's interests. Was she doing the same thing he was, trying to find common ground without actually talking? Jake spent the rest of the day wondering if he was reading too much into things or if there really was some kind of silent communication happening between them. The thought that she might be as aware of him as he was of her was both exciting and terrifying. The next Tuesday brought another almost moment, this one more significant than the others. Jake was in line to order when she walked in. She took her place behind him, close enough that he could hear her quiet good morning to Maya when she approached the counter. Jake ordered his usual, then stepped aside to wait. When she placed her order, Jake realized he was holding his breath, listening to her voice. As they both waited for their drinks, standing just a few feet apart, Jake felt the weight of the unspoken connection between them. This was it. This was his chance to say something, anything, a simple good morning or a comment about the weather. But the seconds ticked by and Jake remained silent. Their drinks came up at the same time. They reached for them simultaneously, and for a brief moment they were standing side by side at the pickup counter. Jake could have easily turned to her and started a conversation. Instead, he grabbed his coffee and walked back to his table, kicking himself mentally for another missed opportunity. But as Jake settled into his chair, he caught her looking in his direction. When their eyes met for just a second, she didn't look away immediately like she usually did. There was something in her expression, a hint of curiosity, or maybe even disappointment. Then she picked up her drink and walked to her table, leaving, Jake wondering if he had just missed the most important moment yet. December had arrived with an unusual warmth for Portland, but inside Brew and Bean the holiday rush was in full swing. Jake pushed through the door on December 15th to find the coffee shop more crowded than he had ever seen it. Holiday shoppers filled every table, their bags and packages creating obstacles throughout the small space. The familiar calm of his morning routine was replaced by chaos. Jake ordered his usual from Maya, who looked frazzled but managed her typical friendly smile. As he turned to find his corner table, his heart sank. A family of 4 had claimed his usual spot, their shopping bags piled high around them. Jake scanned the rest of the coffee shop looking for any available seating. There, common near the back wall, sat one small table for 2, empty, waiting. Jake started walking toward it, weaving through the crowd of customers and their belongings. He was almost there when he saw her approaching from the other direction, carrying her coffee and looking just as determined to claim the only remaining table. They reached it at exactly the same time, stopping short when they realized what was happening. For a moment, they just stood there looking at each other across the small round table. Jake felt his mouth go dry. After months of careful distance and missed opportunities, fate had literally brought them face to face. She was the first to break the silence, and when she spoke, her voice carried a warmth that made Jake's chest tighten. I think this might be meant to happen, she said, gesturing to the table with a gentle smile. Would you mind sharing? I promise I'm quieter than I look. Jake heard a slight accent in her voice, something soft and southern that he hadn't expected. It made her seem even more interesting, more real than the distant figure he had been watching for months. "Of course," Jake managed to say, pulling out the chair across from her. "I don't mind at all." As they settled into their seats, Jake felt a mix of excitement and nervousness that reminded him of his first day of high school. This was really happening. After all those weeks of wondering and almost conversations, they were finally sitting at the same table. She pulled out her book, then seemed to think better of it, sliding it back into her bag. Instead, she wrapped her hands around her coffee cup and looked directly at Jake. "I'm Lily," she said simply. "Jake," he replied, surprised by how normal his voice sounded despite the way his heart was racing. "I know this might sound strange," Lily continued, "but I feel like I should know you by now. We've been coming here at the same time for months, haven't we?" Jake felt relief wash over him. She had noticed too. He wasn't some creepy guy who had been secretly watching a stranger. There had been mutual awareness all along. "I was starting to think I was imagining things," Jake admitted with a laugh. "I kept wondering if you had noticed the same thing I had. That we have identical coffee orders, that we both prefer the tables by the windows, that we both seem to treat this place like our personal office." Lily's eyes sparkled with amusement. "Oh, I noticed." They talked easily after that, the initial awkwardness melting away as if they had been friends for years. Jake learned that Lily had moved to Portland 3 years ago from Tennessee, explaining the accent he had detected. She worked as a physical therapist at the hospital across town, which explained her professional attire and regular schedule. "The bandage," Jake said suddenly, remembering the injury he had noticed weeks ago. "Are you okay? I saw you had hurt your wrist." Lily looked surprised, then pleased. "You noticed that? I fell while hiking in the gorge. Nothing serious, just clumsy. But I'm touched that you were paying attention." Jake felt his face warm. "I hope that doesn't sound weird. I guess I was concerned." "It doesn't sound weird at all," Lily assured him. "It sounds caring." The conversation flowed naturally from there. They discovered they both loved hiking. Though Lily was clearly more adventurous than Jake, they shared similar tastes in movies, both preferring independent films to big blockbusters. And yes, they were both dog people, though neither currently had pets. "I've been thinking about getting a dog," Lily said, stirring her coffee absently. "My apartment allows them, and I think it would be nice to have company, but my schedule is pretty demanding." "I keep telling myself the same thing," Jake replied. "My ex-wife was allergic, so we never had pets. Now that I'm on my own." He paused, realizing he had just mentioned his divorce without thinking about it. Lily, S expression, remained warm and understanding. "Divorce is tough," she said simply. "I went through a difficult breakup myself when I first moved here. Sometimes starting over in a new place is exactly what you need." Jake felt a weight lift from his shoulders. She understood. There was no judgment in her voice, no probing questions about what had gone wrong. Just acknowledgement that sometimes relationships end and people have to rebuild. They talked for over an hour, long past their usual departure times. Jake learned that Lily was originally from a small town outside Nashville, that she had always wanted to live somewhere with mountains, and that she had taken the job in Portland partly as an adventure and partly as an escape from memories. "I should probably get going," Lily finally said, glancing at her phone. "I have patients this afternoon and I need to review their files." Jake felt disappointment wash over him, but also hope. They had finally connected, really connected. This didn't have to be the end. "Would you?" Jake started, then stopped, suddenly nervous again. "Would I what?" Lily prompted gently. "Would you maybe want to have lunch sometime? I mean, no pressure. I've really enjoyed talking with you." Lily's smile was radiant. "I would love that, Jake. I was hoping you would ask." They exchanged phone numbers, fingers fumbling slightly with their devices in their eagerness. As Lily gathered her things to leave, she paused and looked back at Jake. "You know, I have a confession," she said. "I started bringing different books to see if you would notice." I was hoping you might be a reader too. Jake laughed, shaking his head. I noticed every single one. I even went to the bookstore and looked up some of the titles you were reading. Really? Lily looked delighted. Which ones? The one about the woman in the marsh. I almost bought it. You should, Lily said, slinging her bag over her shoulder. It's beautiful. We can talk about it at lunch. As she walked away, Jake sat back in his chair, hardly believing what had just happened. After months of wondering and hoping and building up scenarios in his head, the reality had been better than anything he had imagined. Lily was warm, intelligent, funny, and kind, and she had been just as aware of him as he had been of her. Jake pulled out his phone and looked at her contact information, already thinking about when he should text her. Tomorrow seemed too eager, but waiting a week felt too long. Maybe Thursday, he decided. He would text her Thursday and suggest lunch for the weekend. As Jake packed up his laptop and prepared to leave, he realized he was smiling, really smiling, for the first time in months. The empty coffee shop table that had forced them together felt like the universe's way of saying it was time to stop being afraid and start living again. 3 weeks had passed since that first conversation at the shared table, and Jake felt like he was slowly coming back to life. He and Lily had been texting daily, sharing small moments from their days and planning their first official lunch date. Their morning coffee encounters had evolved into natural conversations, and Jake found himself looking forward to more than just her presence. Now he looked forward to her laugh, her stories, and the way she made everything seem a little brighter. The lunch date was set for a quiet bistro downtown, a place Jake had discovered during his post-divorce wandering phase. It was small and cozy, with soft lighting and tables spaced far enough apart for private conversation. Jake arrived 10 minutes early, his nerves a mix of excitement and anxiety. This felt different from their casual coffee shop chats. This felt like a real beginning. Lily walked in right on time, wearing a simple blue dress that made her eyes look even more vibrant. She spotted Jake immediately and gave him that warm smile that had become his favorite part of any day. As she approached the table, Jake stood up, suddenly unsure whether he should hug her or shake her hand. Lily solved the problem by giving him a quick, friendly hug that smelled like her familiar floral perfume. "This place is perfect," she said, looking around the restaurant as they settled into their seats. "How did you find it?" Jake felt a moment of hesitation. The truth was, he had discovered this place during one of his loneliest days after the divorce, when he couldn't bear to eat another meal alone in his apartment. But he didn't want to bring that energy into this moment. "I was just exploring the neighborhood," he said instead. "Sometimes the best places are hidden in plain sight." Their conversation flowed as easily as it had in the coffee shop. Lily told him about her most challenging patients, the ones who made her job difficult but also rewarding. Jake shared stories about his design clients, including a bakery owner who kept changing her mind about what she wanted her logo to look like. "I think I've redesigned that logo 15 times, Jake said, laughing. "She keeps saying she'll know and when she sees it, but I'm starting to think she doesn't actually know what she wants." "That sounds frustrating," Lily said, taking a bite of her salad. "But also kind of sweet. Maybe she's just nervous about making such a big decision for her business." Jake appreciated how Lily always seemed to find the compassionate angle in any situation. It was one of the things that drew him to her, this ability to see the best in people and circumstances. They were halfway through their meal, deep in conversation about their shared love of hiking, when Jake saw her. His ex-wife Rachel walking through the restaurant door with unsteady steps and slightly unfocused eyes. It was only 2 p.m., but it was clear she had been drinking. Jake's stomach dropped as he watched her scan the restaurant, clearly looking for someone. Their eyes met across the room, and Rachel's face went through a series of expressions. Surprise, hurt, anger, and something that looked like vindication. She started walking toward their table with the determined stride of someone who had found exactly what they were looking for, even if they hadn't known they were looking for it. "Jake," Rachel said loudly as she reached their table, her voice carrying across the quiet restaurant. Several other diners turned to look. "So this is where you've been spending your time." Jake felt his face burn with embarrassment. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" "I could ask you the same thing," Rachel replied, swaying slightly as she looked between Jake and Lily. "Having lunch with someone new already? That was fast even for you." Lily, who had been quietly observing the exchange, stood up gracefully and extended her hand to Rachel. "Hi, I'm Lily. You must be Jake's ex-wife. Would you like to sit down and join us?" Jake stared at Lily in amazement. Instead of being uncomfortable or defensive, she was handling the situation with more grace than he could have imagined. Rachel looked equally surprised by the invitation. Yes, actually I would," Rachel said, accepting Lily's handshake and taking the empty chair Lily had pulled over from a nearby table. What followed was one of the most awkward and yet strangely healing conversations of Jake's life. Rachel, loosened by whatever she had been drinking, talked openly about their marriage, their divorce, and her struggle to adjust to single life. She wasn't mean or vindictive, just hurt and confused. "I keep thinking there must have been someone else," Rachel said, looking directly at Lily. "It seemed so easy for Jake to let go of what we had. I thought maybe he was already moving on before we even separated." Jake started to protest, but Lily gently placed her hand on his arm, encouraging him to let Rachel speak. "I understand that feeling," Lily said softly. "When my last relationship ended, I convinced myself there had to be another reason, something that made it easier for him to walk away. But sometimes people just grow apart and it's not anyone's fault." Rachel studied Lily's face, perhaps looking for signs of deception or judgment. Instead, she seemed to find genuine empathy. "How long has this been going on?" she asked, gesturing. "Between Jake and Lily?" "We just started talking 3 weeks ago," Jake said honestly. "Rachel, I promise you there was no one else during our marriage. You know that. We both know why things didn't work out between us." Rachel nodded slowly and, for the first time since she had sat down, she looked truly present instead of driven by emotion and alcohol. "You're right. I know you're right. It's been hard, Jake. Seeing you move forward while I feel stuck." They talked for another 20 minutes, Rachel gradually becoming more coherent and less confrontational. She apologized for the scene she had caused and even managed a genuine smile when Lily complimented her earrings. By the time Rachel left, she seemed more at peace than Jake had seen her in months. "I'm so sorry," Jake said to Lily after Rachel was gone. "That was mortifying. She's not usually like that." "Well, actually, I don't know what she's usually like anymore. We've barely spoken since the divorce was finalized." "Don't apologize," Lily said firmly. "Jake, we all have histories. We all have people from our past who might show up unexpectedly. The question is whether you're ready to build something new, even knowing that the past might complicate things sometimes." Jake looked at her across the table, this amazing woman who had just handled his personal drama with more maturity and kindness than he had any right to expect. "Are you asking if I'm ready?" "I'm asking if we're both ready," Lily corrected. "Because, I should tell you, my ex didn't just cheat on me. He cheated on me with my best friend, someone I had known since college. So I understand complicated. I understand how the past can suddenly show up and make everything feel uncertain." Jake reached across the table and took her hand. "I want to try, Lily. I want to see where this goes, complications and all. But I also want you to feel safe doing that. I don't want you to feel like you're signing up for drama." Lily squeezed his hand. "Life is drama, Jake. The good relationships are the ones where you face it together instead of running from it alone." As they left the restaurant that day, Jake felt something shift inside him. The shame and awkwardness of Rachel's appearance was already fading, replaced by admiration for how Lily had handled everything. She had seen him at a vulnerable moment, dealing with his messy past, and instead of running, she had stayed. She had even helped walking Lily to her car. Jake realized that what had started as an embarrassing interruption had actually become something else entirely. It had become proof that whatever was growing between them was strong enough to handle real life, with all its unexpected complications and imperfect moments. Same time Thursday at the coffee shop? Lily asked as she unlocked her car door. Definitely, Jake replied. And Lily? Thank you. For everything today. She stood on her toes and kissed his cheek, a gesture so natural and sweet it took his breath away. That's what friends do, Jake. And I have a feeling we're going to be very good friends. 6 months had passed since that awkward lunch encounter with Rachel, and Jake's life had settled into a rhythm he had never experienced before. Not the rigid routine of his previous life, but something warmer and more flexible. He and Lily had been taking things slowly, building their relationship on a foundation of friendship and genuine understanding. They still met at Brew and Bean twice a week, but now they sat together at their old separate tables pushed into one. They had become a fixture there, the couple Maya loved to tease about their matching orders and synchronized reading habits. Jake had met Lily's friends, a group of nurses and therapists who welcomed him with the same warmth that Lily brought to everything. Lily had integrated seamlessly into Jake's small circle, charming his business partner and even getting along well with his sister during a video call. Everything felt natural, comfortable, right. Which made the phone call on a rainy Thursday morning so unexpected. Jake was working on a logo design for a new restaurant when his phone buzzed with a text from Lily. Can we talk tonight? Something important has come up at work. The message was vague enough to worry him, but Jake tried not to overthink it. Maybe she was getting a promotion or dealing with a difficult patient situation. But when evening came, and Jake knocked on the door of Lily's apartment, he could tell immediately that something was weighing heavily on her mind. Hi, she said, opening the door with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Come in. I made coffee. Lily's apartment was warm and inviting, filled with plants and books and photographs from her hiking adventures. Jake had spent many evenings here over the past few months, cooking dinner together or watching movies on her comfortable couch. But tonight the atmosphere felt different. Lily seemed restless, moving around the kitchen without her usual calm efficiency. So, Jake said, accepting the coffee cup she handed him. What's going on? Your text sounded serious. Lily sat down, across from him at her small dining table, wrapping her hands around her own mug. I got a call from Seattle yesterday, from Northwest Rehabilitation Center. They're opening a new specialized unit for spinal cord injury patients, and they want me to head it up. Jake felt his stomach drop, but he tried to keep his expression neutral. That sounds like an amazing opportunity. It is, Lily said quietly. It's everything I've worked toward professionally. The salary, the responsibility, the chance to build a program from the ground up. And the facility they're building is state-of-the-art. I would be working with the best equipment, the most advanced techniques. But, Jake prompted, hearing the hesitation in her voice. But it would mean leaving Portland, leaving my job here, my apartment, my life. She paused, looking directly at him. Leaving you. They sat in silence for a moment, both understanding the weight of what she was saying. This wasn't just a job offer, it was a crossroads. A choice between the career opportunity of a lifetime and the relationship they had been carefully building together. How long do you have to decide? Jake asked. A week. They need an answer by next Friday. Lily stood up abruptly, pacing to the window that overlooked the street. Jake, I don't know what to do. 3 months ago, this would have been easy. I would have said yes immediately and started packing. But now... Now what? Jake asked gently. Lily turned to face him, and Jake could see the conflict playing out across her features. Now I have something here that I don't want to lose. Someone I don't want to lose. Jake's heart clenched. He wanted to tell her to stay, to choose him, to choose what they were building together. But he also knew what it was like to have dreams deferred, to wonder about paths not taken. His own career had taken years to rebuild after his divorce, and he understood the importance of seizing opportunities when they came. Tell me about the job, he said instead. What would you be doing? For the next hour, Lily described the position in detail. Her eyes lit up as she talked about the innovative treatment approaches she would be able to implement, the research opportunities, the chance to train other therapists. Jake could see how much it meant to her, how perfectly it aligned with her professional goals. "It sounds incredible," Jake said honestly, "like it was designed specifically for you." "That's what makes this so hard," Lily replied, sinking back into her chair. "If it was just any job, any city, the choice would be easy. But this is the kind of opportunity that might not come around again." They spent the evening talking through every angle of the decision. Jake suggested long distance, but they both knew how difficult that would be with demanding careers and a relationship that was still relatively new. They talked about Jake potentially moving to Seattle too, but his business was finally gaining momentum in Portland, and starting over in a new city would be a huge risk. By the time Jake left that night, they had reached no conclusions, but they had agreed to think about it separately before making any decisions. Jake walked home through the quiet streets, his mind racing. He cared about Lily deeply, maybe even loved her, though they hadn't said those words yet. But he also cared about her happiness and her future. How could he ask her to give up something so important for a relationship that was still finding its footing? The next few days passed in a strange, suspended animation. They still met for coffee, still texted throughout the day, but there was an unspoken tension underlying everything they did. Jake caught himself memorizing small details about their time together, as if he was already preparing for it to end. On Wednesday evening, Jake was leaving his apartment to meet some friends for dinner when he ran into his neighbor, Mrs. Chen, struggling with her groceries. As he helped her carry the bags upstairs, she thanked him repeatedly. "You know," she said as they reached her door, "my late husband always said that the biggest regrets in life aren't usually about the chances we took, but about the ones we didn't take." Jake wasn't sure if she was referring to his help with the groceries or if she had somehow intuited his current situation, but her words stuck with him through dinner and into the sleepless night that followed. Thursday morning came, their regular coffee date, but Lily texted to cancel. She needed to think, she said she would call him later. Jake spent the day distracted, accomplishing little work and checking his phone constantly. That evening, Jake found himself standing outside Lily's apartment building, uncertain why he had come. He hadn't planned to visit, but something had drawn him here. As he was debating whether to go up or leave, his phone rang. "Jake?" Lily's voice sounded strained. "Could you come up? I need to tell you something." Jake's heart pounded as he climbed the stairs to her floor. When Lily opened the door, he could see she had been crying, but there was also something resolute in her expression. "I've been thinking about what you said," she began, leading him into her living room. "About how this job was designed for me, about opportunities that might not come again." Jake braced himself for what was coming next. "And you're right. It is an incredible opportunity. It would be the culmination of everything I've worked for." Lily walked to her front door and placed her hand on the handle, staring at it for a moment. "I could take this job, Jake. I could move to Seattle and build this amazing program and advance my career in ways I never imagined possible." She turned the deadbolt with a decisive click, the sound echoing in the quiet apartment. "But I realized something today while I was walking around the city, looking at all the places that have become meaningful to me over the past few months. The coffee shop where we first talked, the park where we had our second lunch, the bookstore where you bought me that novel I mentioned." Lily turned around and walked straight toward him, her eyes never leaving his face. Each step was deliberate, purposeful, full of intention. "I don't want to start over somewhere else, Jake. I don't want to build a new life without you in it. These past 6 months haven't just been about dating someone new. They've been about finding a partner, finding someone who makes me want to build something lasting." Jake felt his breath catch as she stopped directly in front of him. "I called Seattle this afternoon and turned down the position." "Lily," Jake started, but she held up her hand. "I'm not giving up my career for you, Jake. I'm choosing the life I want to build, and that life includes you. There will be other opportunities, other programs to develop, but there's only one you, only one us." Jake reached for her hands, hardly believing what he was hearing. "Are you sure?" "I don't want you to regret this decision. I don't want you to wonder what might have been. The only thing I would regret is not fighting for something this good, Lily said firmly. I love you, Jake. I love the way you make me laugh, the way you remember small details about my day, the way you handled meeting Rachel with such grace. I love the future I can see when I'm with you. I love you too, Jake said, the words feeling both natural and momentous. I think I have since that first day you asked to share my table. They held each other in the middle of her living room, and Jake felt something settle in his chest that he hadn't realized was unsettled. This was what he had been searching for without knowing it. Not just love, but partnership. Not just romance, but a real life built together. 3 months later, they were back at Brew and Bean, reading the real estate section together. Lily had found an even better position at a rehabilitation center in